we'll record a little opener for me and Adam, and then I'll just bring you in, and we'll just go from there, and then we'll probably talk for like half hour or so, and then that'll be it.
Sounds great.
Cool. Right, here we go. Welcome to episode 2 of Keeping on Track. I'm Bradley Williams, and this other gentleman whose dulcet tones you may or may not be able to discern from my own, as we've found when we visit certain countries, is Mr. Adam Heath.
I mean, every time I do a project, doesn't matter with who it is or from what part of the world, they always say, "Oh, you sound just like Brad." And I've never personally considered us to have that similarity, but yeah, it totally throws people.
Yeah, there we go. So this week we're going to be talking to, well, actually, you know what, Adam, why don't you introduce him? Our guest for this week.
We're week 2, and we've already got a new feature, which is like guest of the week. This is amazing. It's exciting. Is it just because you didn't feel that we had enough to talk about? We needed to bring someone else into the...
To be honest, I think we're not that interested. We'll get boring quite quickly. So we've got to find people that have got some interesting stories to tell. Okay. And I know that our guest this week has definitely got some interesting stories for us.
So our guest this week is not only one of our long-term fellow collaborators, filmmaker extraordinaire, director, photographer, sound designer, musician, the lot. But when Brad said to me he wants a guest, I immediately thought we need someone who's had a very, very different experience watching movies than us. And there's only one man for that job, Mr. Kirill Teslia.
Hello.
How was that for an intro?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I think also, I don't know what came first. I think I also volunteered. Maybe not volunteered, begged.
That's actually true. Kirill was the first person I sent the podcast link to. And he was only 15 seconds into listening to it when he wrote back and said, "I'll be on it."
Yeah.
Careful what you wish for. Careful what you wish for.
I was like, if you ever need a guest, you know.
There you go. That's how fast things move.
Yeah.
That's it, man.
But I love podcasts, and I was like, it's a little dream of mine to be on one. So this is my debut.
Well,
podcast.
We like to make wishes come true, don't we, Adam?
Oh, amazing. Straight away.
While we're speaking about accents and myself and Brad sounding identical, apparently, we should probably just note that Kirill is from Australia. Yes.
I've spent a lot of time in South Africa as well, so it's a bit of a...
So what is it about this accent? Why do people get so confused by it? Literally every person I've met and worked with has always asked me, "Oh, Kirill, is he from New Zealand or Australia or South Africa or all these different countries?" And no one can ever pick the accent. So for the benefit, you've all had 30 seconds now to guess. For the benefit of the audience, Kirill, where were you born and where did you grow up?
The good old motherland, Russian Federation. Or USSR. Actually, it was USSR when I was born there.
Wow.
In the 80s.
It's just weird because you don't sound anything like your stereotypical 80s Russian villain.
Oh, right? No.
There's not a hint of Gary Oldman about you. And I think that's what throws people off.
I think we're gonna discover later, but I have grown up on a lot of American movies.
Yeah, well, half of them. Which brings us to, so we're trying to do a thing each podcast session where we try and relate our topic to a film. And there is a film this week that I do want to talk about, but I'll come to that later on, because what I want to do is I just want to jump straight into it, Kirill.
Yeah.
Is that one of the subject for this week is poorly authored content, or the storytelling in an improper way with content, and you've got a lot of experience in this, haven't you?
Oh,
because growing up, your father had quite an interesting parenting technique, didn't he?
Oh yeah, he's. I think it's kind of a style that he developed over the years. I think it was out of necessity, really. So he worked abroad for many years. So I think about he was away for about 5 or 7 years actually. before we kind of made the move as a family to UK, and he wanted to send some of the the best films back to Russia, but he couldn't afford many tapes, so he would just buy one sort of 3-hour tape, and then try to put as many movies onto one tape as possible. But some movies are a bit too long, so he would edit them live as he recorded them. So we would get about 5 movies in a 3-hour tape, and some key bits would be cut out. That so for years I have watched movies that were about 40 minutes long, edited by my dad, based kind of on what he thought was good bits.
So, but what were some of the movies that your dad gave you the father's cuts of?
I think the most notable one, which I have watched since, and recently, I think it was in the last 6 months, I thought it was on Netflix, I thought I'd treat myself and watch it in full, was Jurassic Park.
So what were some of the revelatory moments for you watching Jurassic Park? What was essentially the first time round?
Oh, well, yeah, definitely. The one bit I didn't realise, I mean, the other thing you have to kind of appreciate is we watched them in English. I mean, like, we didn't know English, so we watched movies in English that were cut by my dad. So one thing I didn't realise is that the 2 kids that were in the park, they were the owner's grandkids.
Right. Okay.
So, yeah, so kind of, I just presumed they were just 2 kids in the park. I had no idea why they were there. They sort of flew in a helicopter. I was like, this is pretty cool. So then they went and saw the dinosaurs, and then the movie finished because he cut out all the conversation bits. Yeah.
So for you, Jurassic Park was essentially a bunch of strangers appear on an island with 2 kids.
Yeah.
Then there are some dinosaurs at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So all the kind of the key bits when they might have been talking about stuff and there were tense moments, he just cut them out. He's like, boring. There's no action. He wants to see that.
So,
Scrap them.
roughly how old would you have been right when these films were being edited?
So probably from the age of like 9 to 14, I'd say.
It sounds a daft question, but did you know that he'd edited? Were you conscious that he'd done an edit and taken out half the movie, or did you just think that was the movie?
Yes and no. I think it was clear that somebody has paused because they were so badly edited. There was no skill in it. It was just start and stop. So you could like cut half sentence in and start, half an hour later. I suppose, but I've never really given enough thought. I just presume I trusted my dad. I thought he would put all the key bits in for me to understand the story, maybe do his own cut. But actually, as I discovered later, because my dad's he's still got that editing technique as he watches movies now. So he buys loads of action movies, and then when there's a bit that he would say a bit boring, they might be having a meeting, but it's a very important meeting, but there's no action. So he would, and I've seen him do it, he would just fast forward that bit to the next bit that has action in. So that's what he was doing. He was like, they're talking, nothing's happening, let's move on, let's pause this tape. I could cram another 5 movies on this.
I actually think we could start a whole podcast just about this subject because there's so much to unpack. I'm interested in bizarrely. I mean, we're saying that he did it for necessity, so he could send home 5-6 movies on a tape, which is kind of sweet. He just wants you guys to have all the movies that you can't get in Russia. But it's not just that he was doing that out of necessity. That's kind of how he views films. Is that exposition doesn't do anything for him. He just wants the action.
Oh yeah.
I'm fascinated by how many of those movies he's seen using that model still made sense to him, probably, and what interpretation he took from them. Wouldn't that be fascinating to try and it's almost possible to do, but analyze how much of the subtext actually translated to a Russian guy, a 60-year-old Russian guy, fast forwarding through bits he wasn't interested in, but still digested the story. That would be really interesting to know, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, I can answer that question, and it's absolute zero. Because when I used to live with mum and dad, we would watch a movie, and my mum's English is pretty good, but she does misses some of the bits. So she would then turn to us and say, like, "What was this bit about?" And Dad would translate to her. So I'll sit quietly and wait for him to translate. And it's not just close to what it is. It's sometimes completely different to what the conversation is, like complete opposite. So I would imagine if he skips bits and then just watches the action, at the end of the movie, he has no idea why things happened, what driven those scenes, and why it has, the film has developed that way.
I suppose the only movie that he possibly would understand would probably be The Matrix, maybe.
Oh,
no.
That's one of the movies where I think he taped us. I can't remember whether he taped the movie for us or he showed us the movie using the fast forward style. And I presume you can understand the confusing bit. Maybe the bit when he takes the pill that was lost. So we had no idea about what has happened in the Matrix until years later.
So it goes from Trinity at the beginning, and then suddenly Neo's fighting a guy in sunglasses.
Yeah, only the best bits.
That's brilliant.
I just wonder if your dad is the greatest editor that's ever lived. That's some skill, because he's editing live. He's deciding as he's watching it, this is going to be boring. I can feel it.
Yeah.
Fast forward and stops it in time for the action. It's amazing.
He's probably the only person that watched The Irishman in like a 1 hour space.
Well, since it's is there a lot of action in it?
In The Irishman, there's about 20 minutes of killing, I think, and then there's maybe some fights, and that's about it. So yeah.
I reckon he wouldn't have bothered at all with that movie.
What are some other highlights that you can remember? What other movies has he famously kind of edited down when you were kids?
We watched some inappropriate movies that we probably shouldn't have watched, like Predator.
10 minutes long.
I think half an hour, 40 minutes. There's a lot of action in Predator.
Just watch the whole third act of the movie. Just yeah.
I think the only bit he skipped was I think the planning stage at the beginning. I don't think I ever seen it in full.
Right.
When I think it starts off when they drop him in. Have you guys seen the movie?
Adam's shaking his head.
When they're in a jungle.
Yeah.
That's the bit when you get dropped in a jungle. That's the bit I've seen. And
so for you, Predator begins with a skinned corpse hanging upside down from a tree. That's where the movie begins for you.
Yeah.
No idea what it is or why it's there or who these men are. Just okay.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Fantastic.
What else have I seen? True Lies.
Okay.
So I've seen that, and I think that the middle bit was edited out. I think, heavily. So
your version of True Lies begins with Arnold Schwarzenegger on a mission, then randomly he's on a horse fighting terrorists in a skyscraper.
Yeah.
No idea who Jamie Lee Curtis is or why this little girl's hostage or anything like that. Yeah. It's just jumps.
Exactly, yeah.
Isn't this interesting though when you think about some of the challenges we face, Brad?
Yeah.
Because this is, although we're laughing about it and it seems unbelievable and hysterical, this is one of the challenges we face when we're making training videos, right? Is we're constantly talking to 100%. Clients about if you lose your audience and they fast forward, skip, just to get to the end to say they've watched it and tick a box, your message is lost entirely. So totally. you have to recognise your audience and make it compelling.
Yeah.
I think Kirill's dad might be an extreme example of that, because I'm sure not many people jump through the movie quite as he would, but he wasn't engaged. Clearly, wasn't engaged.
No, and I think that's the other part of the coin is that the message has to be engaging, and it has to make sense, because if you have people that do the opposite, you have those people that will watch every second of it. Are they actually getting anything from it, or are they getting the equivalent of a long form fast forward, where then there's nothing there? It's interesting because the movie for this podcast that I wanted to kind of use as our case study, beyond Kirill's amazing. Genuinely, I want to get my hands on these versions of the films. Like, I want to see these versions of the films. But the film that I wanted to kind of use as a case study was Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, which Kirill's probably seen about 15 minutes of, and Adam's probably not seen any of. He's probably seen the trailer. But the movie itself, for anyone that's not seen it, is essentially, and this is the irony, is I'm not 100% sure what it's about, but it's essentially a guy who is I think he's a Shaolin monk or some sort of monk of some kind, or warrior, and he's employed by some sort of shadow government agency to go to an island and enter a contest where there's a man who used to come from the same monastery as him, who now has a school of people that he's training and fighting, and there's potential that he's maybe got weapons or missiles or something on the island that no one's sure about, and for some unknown reason they're not able to storm the island, and no one's allowed to take guns on the island, so they send Bruce Lee in undercover with two other generic Western characters to fight in this tournament and secretly spy on what's on the island. And that's kind of what the story's about. And the reason that fits into this model is because it is genuinely a movie that makes very little sense. It's actually heralded as a classic. It's been deemed as culturally, historically and aesthetically significant, which is true because at its core the movie is an expression of Chinese culture, and I think it's all about the philosophy of Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's style of martial arts, and so the movie is conceptually trying to prove a point, and it's the movie that launched, kind of cemented Bruce Lee's Hollywood career, albeit very short because he died a few months after the film was released. But as a narrative form, it's just absolute chaos. It makes no sense whatsoever. It's just kind of like, there's this whole scene when there are the three main characters. So you've got Lee, which is Bruce Lee, you've got a guy called Roper, played by John Saxon, and a guy called Williams, played by Jim Kelly. And they're all on boats. And the movie's been on for like 10 minutes. And these guys are all on these small little boats. And then it kind of goes like, that sort of flashback, and you see each reason why that person's there. So randomly you suddenly find out Bruce Lee's got a sister that was murdered by one of this villain's henchmen, who's like this white guy that she cuts and gives him a scar. Then you find out that Roper's actually a shady businessman that's got mafia after him, and then Williams was in, I don't know whether he was going on holiday or going to the event, and then two racist cops stop him, and he beats the cops up and steals the car and drives off. And apparently that's enough reason to suddenly want to go to this island and be in this movie. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And it kind of, for me, cements this idea that, like you were saying, Adam, that if the narrative doesn't make sense, people are either going to not connect with it or they're going to fast forward through it. And I imagine that Kirill's dad watching Enter the Dragon probably would have just fast forwarded to like the last 20 minutes of the movie when stuff actually happens. Like all the stuff people remember, the bear claw, the mirrors, the scratches, the Bolo kind of crunching the guy in half, all of that stuff, that's in the last sort of 20 minutes of the movie. And it's just really crazy, isn't it? I don't understand how. Well, I can understand it because we come into contact with it, where you lose track of your objectives, you lose track of your characters, you lose track of your stories, and I can imagine this movie had similar situations. But do you have, like, Adam? Can you think of like any scenarios where you feel like that we've ever pulled that out of the bag. Like we've gone in that situation and managed to pull it out, because I don't think you can. I think when you get to that point, you almost lose track of it. It's impossible to make it make sense again.
I don't know. It's hard to say, actually. You'd have to probably talk to the people that watch the things we make and understand what they took from it. Because as well as losing people and not being engaging, probably a bigger worry is that folks will probably take some key message away from what you've done, even if it's not the message you wanted them to take. You know, there are films that Kirill and his dad have seen that they've taken a meaning from it. It is just not the right one. It's a complete kind of mishmash, and that's almost more dangerous, isn't it? Is leaving ambiguity, and that's something I always try and take out. I don't like even ambiguity where someone could interpret it in potentially completely the wrong way. I think it's okay to interpret philosophical kind of films and content, but if there is a message you're trying to convey, you need to make sure that's the one that's taken away. But I'd be interested to ask people what they took away from some of the stuff that we've made. You know, it's an exercise. I don't know whether any of the organisations that we've worked for have done that. Have they ever really gone back and looked a year later about a piece of content, a video, and asked people actually what they felt and what they took from it? That might be a really interesting experiment to do.
Yeah. Well, I think what we find interesting as well, isn't it, when we go out and film something or we write something and then we share it with each other. And that's almost a bit of a litmus test as well sometimes. Like Kirill, you know, he's been editing for us on a project recently, and it's probably quite an interesting litmus test is that we, you know, Adam, you wrote the scripts. I've seen the scripts 1,000 times. We filmed them together. Then we hand all that rough footage over to someone like Kirill and say, right, can you work on that for us? And it's quite interesting to sort of see what you pull together. So, I mean, from your side, Kirill, do you ever feel like you can't make sense of something as you're watching it, or do you sort of feel like as you're editing it, you're thinking to yourself, this isn't making much sense? Or do you ever kind of, or because there also the other argument could be that it's people like you, like people in the post-production element of it, who actually suddenly are able to make it work because you've got all the pieces scattered on the table and you can kind of rejig them and remove and move things about to make more sense of it.
I think so. I think initially you look at stuff and you go, oh my god, like this, you know, there's so much stuff, and then you have to pick out the right bits, and you almost kind of start making sense for yourself first. So, and then out of, you know, for instance, you might have somebody delivering a line 3 times and you pick the one that you think that makes the most sense, you know, for you, or, you know, or for the edit that you're doing, potentially, unless it's been specified by, you know, by the director. They're saying like, I want this specific take. But when you have 3 or 4 takes on the table and you think like, right, I think by reading by the script, reading what kind of the narration is and feeling the tone of the video, you just think like, I feel like this needs to go in, you know. So with someone's, I suppose early stages it's very tricky to make sense of it, but I think it's a kind of process that comes together over time.
You get a sense very early on if something's going awry, if people don't understand what it is that they want to say. And I mean, you have kind of polar opposite issues, is that you either have people who don't know what they want to say, or people who have too much that they want to say, or something very specific they want to say, but they don't know how to say it. With Enter the Dragon, there are 2 scenes in the movie that you feel were like someone wrote those very early on, and you know that they stayed in the script the whole time. And one of them is right at the beginning. Lee's in this monastery, and this is actually one of the only takes in the movie where I'm like, actually, this is amazing. A 5-6 minute take with these 2 characters just walking and talking, and you think they've remembered all of this dialogue. It's insane.
My dad would have skipped that.
Exactly.
That's gone, mate. That would have been
bit boring, irrelevant.
Walking, talking. Where's the action?
But the irony is that the point is, in that conversation, they have this whole thing about like, if you want to beat your enemy, you have to destroy their facade. And then right at the end of the movie, in the Hall of Mirrors, which is the other amazing piece of filmmaking, because I don't know how they managed to film in a room full of mirrors without not being in a single shot. That's quite a feat.
Oh yeah, definitely.
they even go to the point of using the audio, recycling the audio from that scene at the beginning of the movie in an echoed, like, kind of, you must smash the mirrors to beat him, like, in case you miss the point, because your brain has gone to sleep for the last 90 minutes. You have to remind you, there was a point to this. So that's quite an interesting thing. But yeah, I think that sometimes people think if you bookend it with a message, then that's great. Then people will take away. But I think if it's not making sense in the middle, or you're garbled in the middle, people will lose that. And so I think that businesses really need to focus on what messages that they're trying to share. What are the objectives that they're trying to achieve when they are putting content together, whether it's film or PDFs or e-learning or whatever it is. I think that narrative is so integral, and I know we're going to be biased, right? Because narrative is our form. It's what we like, but you can't just make something look flashy and interesting, and that will give it substance, because it's not true.
Oh, absolutely.
I think when we started out, we were naturally considered ourselves filmmakers, and we were asked to make films, make videos, and that's what we did. Folks need a video, we make a video, and we perhaps quite quickly jumped into write a script, film it, edit it. In the last year or two is when we've really started to I guess, earn the right with some of our clients to spend a bit more time developing content. And that's where it probably sometimes appears a little bit overkill. How many conversations do we really need to have about the key message? But it's everything, right? There are projects we're working on at the moment where we've had, hours and hours and hours of development meetings where we've just talked through the subject. Let us really understand your business, what you're doing, the challenge you're facing, the thing you're trying to change, and all that kind of prodding and poking of, well, why don't people already understand that in your organisation? What understanding have they got, and where has that come from? And all that kind of investigation is what enables us to make a powerful video, right? But it's the legwork you have to put in, the kind of the glitz of a script, and then going and shooting something is you'll earn that at the end. But to begin with, we need that time to develop and understand and get under the hood of the kind of problem.
I think pre-production is a key, and talking from an editor's point of view, and when you're shooting on set, if that work isn't put in, it's very hard to sometimes to decipher what, like, it makes the process way harder. And even shooting personal projects, and like looking back over the years, and there's shoots where I've done no pre-production whatsoever. You turn up both on set and in the editing room, and you think like, oh my god, I should have spent like as much time prepping for this as shooting it, and the times that it has, you put the effort in and you done the work before that, it seems to run way smoother.
Pre-production, like you say, there's that planning, that preparation, and because then when you have to pivot, as we all know, even on the most elaborate, expensive, high-end film sets, you have pink pages. That's a thing, right? Even some of the greatest films in the world were rewritten the day before. Stanley Kubrick was walking around the set of The Shining with a typewriter, changing dialogue left, right, and centre. But it's okay to change dialogue, to change the format, to change the approach, as long as the meaning and the intent stays the same.
Yes, I guess it's supporting the meaning. You have that vision, you have that message, and you're just imagining better ways to support it and hold the whole thing up, which is just completely fine. I think if you're fundamentally changing what you're doing, that's a bit of a different problem. But
definitely, and that because that is the thing, is that I think that's what we want people to understand, is okay to make changes. You don't, once it's not set in stone, but you have to, like you say, Adam, you have to have that fundamental element that remains the same. And then the other side of it is, especially with film, there's a certain point where it's locked. You can't, unless you go back and refilm, you can't change what was said. I mean, you can do cutaways and you can drop in dubbing and ADR it and change some of the dialogue, but you can't physically well, you can, but it's costly. You can't physically manipulate someone's mouth to make them say different words. So you have to have the coverage, and you have to be able to cut around it to make that work. And we've done that in the past, but you can only do that so much before you start to have a completely different film. And And so I think that there's almost sometimes there's that element of trust that comes in, but I think that's maybe the other part is people sometimes get a bit cold feet, don't they? When you get nearer the end of something and you're just about to launch it, there's that sense of, oh, is this right? Have we done it properly? Have we, do we need to change it? No, trust yourself. Trust. I think it was Tracy Letts who gave Greta Gerwig some advice on the set of Lady Bird. And she said, I wrote this script, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. And he said, listen, trust the person you were when you wrote this. And I think that's the point, isn't it? We need to trust, whatever content you're creating, you need to trust the person you were when you come up with that. Trust the person you were when you developed that. Because you're a different person now, you've gone through it. But you need to have that trust and that faith to know that what you're creating was right and is right. And that's a scary thing sometimes, I think, for a lot of people. And I wonder whether you feel that maybe features in a lot of this as well, that kind of to-in and fro-in and I need to check it. I need to make sure that this person's happy with it and that person's happy with it before we release it. Do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
You made me start thinking about some of these projects that might take 3, 4, 5 months to realise or longer. There might be literally a requirement. It could be a year that you're working on something to develop a campaign or a product for someone, in which time they've kind of realised perhaps they weren't ready, when they started. They actually did, I'm thinking about one of our big clients, through the process of 2 or 3 months of creating that content, they'd actually kind of done the thinking they hadn't already done by the time we'd finished the video. And they'd realised, actually, what we thought we wanted to do was change, it's morphed. So, and you might need something different by the end. So that's something else to kind of balance, I guess, is knowing that once you've committed and you're starting down that path, you hopefully have a solid enough vision that it can carry you through the course of creating that content. But that balance is a very hard thing to strike.
I do wonder whether people maybe jump into projects without giving it enough thought to know what they really want to do.
I was just going to say that, and I might regret saying it because it might do us out of work. So we have to be, careful about what we say. But that is true. There are definitely cases where you can too quickly jump to, we've got this thing, we've got an idea, let's make a video. And as I said before, through the course of making a video, over only a couple of months potentially of developing the idea, writing the script, shooting it, you actually realise we weren't quite ready. We actually hadn't given enough time and thought to that kind of need that message really to communicate. And that, I guess, feeds into the idea that a video is a kind of delivery mechanism for that message, but the message needs to be watertight. You need to know what you're doing. It's a little bit too easy maybe in this day and age to have a fabulous idea for a new initiative in your organisation and within 24 hours wanting to be starting to make a video. And actually you need to be sure about what you're saying, why you're saying it, the impact you hope to have, the reason that you need to do whatever it is you're doing, and then start down that course of actually making content. And there are many times where we've picked up the phone to one another and asked ourselves, why are we making this video? We're happy to make it, but is it really necessary at this stage, or have we leapt in a little bit too quick potentially?
Adding to this, I think it goes with a question you asked me previously. And a lot of, I've done personal projects where people approached me and said, I want a video done. And didn't really they just wanted it done, quickly. They just wanted to get it done. And the biggest thing for me, they might have had the idea, but the idea wasn't developed enough, as Adam was just saying. They said to me, we want it done in this way. And I was like, okay, that's absolutely fine. We can get it done. But on the day, they just didn't realize how difficult it would be to shoot. We could have got a way better product, if we just slow down a bit, and develop the concept a little bit.
And because I think that's definitely another thing that we come up to. There is that. The key takeaways are have development conversations. We can be engaged or engaged any vendor early in the conversation and kind of say to them, look, this is what we're thinking of doing. Have some chats about it. And then come back to it a month later to start pre-production when you know what you want to do. I think that's one thing. You don't have to have a concrete objective in mind when you approach a vendor about this. It's good to have that developmental, because also we can have that conversation, say, well, actually, that if you want to do this, or you're thinking of going in this direction, you're probably going to need to do this, it's going to probably take this long, and so you can plan for it. And then the other thing is, once you launch into that pre-production, don't rush it. Don't put unnecessary deadlines in place. Ask questions, have that two-way exchange, and kind of figure out a realistic timeline, because people do treat it a bit like committing to a skydive. Like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do it. So now just get me up in the plane and let me jump.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we need to, let's spend some time discussing it. Let's think about it. Where we're going to go and really plan it so you can enjoy the actual jump itself. And then you've got something to be proud of at the end, not just, I've jumped, I panicked the whole way down, I'm so glad that was over. Well, what's the point in doing it? Let's have something to enjoy at the end of that. And so it may take a bit longer than you might want it to do, or you may have to make certain sacrifices along the way. But I think that the end product will be so much better for all of those reasons. And so you won't have people like Kirill's dad who are fast forwarding through it, or you won't have situations like with Enter the Dragon, where you may have like one or two moments that are really amazing, but the rest of it is just complete dross.
Why is Enter the Dragon heralded and held in such high regard if it's such a kind of mess of a story? What's holding it up?
Its central philosophy is, like I say, it's bookended by its central philosophy, and it did for Kung Fu what maybe like the Fast and Furious did for cars, where everyone said, "Now this is really cool. I want to be a part of this." You had for the first time in maybe forever, you had a non-stereotypical Asian lead in a Hollywood film. It also introduced more subtleties of Chinese culture into Western cinema, and its effects can be felt today. In the 25-minute version of The Matrix that Kirill saw, it was probably quite evident that a movie like Enter the Dragon just influenced that to no end. Up until this point in the 70s, 1973, a fight in an American film would have been John Wayne going, "Why, you pilgrim," and sort of right hooking someone, and they fly over a horse or something like that. It was very kind of sluggish. This movie just completely changed the whole landscape of fighting and martial arts and Chinese culture within Western cinema. So that's why it's significant.
I think it also trickled way further than that. I mean, I've heard about Bruce Lee in Russia, and that was partly, behind the Iron Curtain as well. Because only 1990 or 91 where we started to get way more Western cinema in. But still, I've never seen any of his movies. But then we knew exactly who he was. And I find it fascinating, the fact that you mentioned Bruce Lee and you'd be like, yeah, he's amazing in martial arts.
Yeah.
Although never actually seen a movie or being able to see a movie, he just went really far.
Well, and it's crazy as well, because I mean, just to close in really, the movie is essentially a bad James Bond film. That is what it is. He's like a Chinese James Bond, and I mean, the film itself felt like something like Dr. No or the Man with the Golden Gun came out a year later. The film itself is a formula. It follows a certain formula that's irrelevant, but like you say, Kirill, it's culturally significant to the point where it turned Bruce Lee into an icon. And that's no small feat to do that. But I think that's because it's this is something people have never seen before. And you watch it now, it is tacky, it's hammy. Like I say, there are some technically amazing scenes. That, just as a quick aside, there's Luca Guadagnino did a remake of Suspiria recently, and there's a scene where one of these dancers is getting kind of being bewitched and her body's being distorted and broken and everything. And when you watch the special features, they had to film in that room and they had to digitally remove themselves from every mirror. This was filmed in 1973 and there's not a camera in sight. And it's just amazing that kind of level of wizardry and technical know-how went into a film that was essentially drivel. But I think that kind of goes to show that sometimes you only need moments of genius to make something memorable.
that's again similar to some of the projects we do, where we are literally pushing boundaries for organisations. They might be working on a video piece of content that stretches beyond what they would normally create, and you're very obviously stretching the limits, but it opens up a world of opportunities. Suddenly we've done something that's a little bit, different in terms of tone or look or feel, and it opens up this entire new world for that organisation. But it is a gradual process. There is a kind of stretching that's happening, where you take it from a very plain two people talking to each other, exactly the kind of scene that Kirill's dad would have edited out. You've moved it from that to a piece of drama, something a little bit more memorable, a little bit more kind of engaging.
I've got quite a bit of experience, with teaching, and try something a little bit different, a little bit more engaging, more exciting, and people will lap this up. It's going to be way more learning is going to be happening.
And that's it, really. I know that kind of flies in the face a little bit of what we've been talking about in terms of the content being right, but it is those two things together that make the best content. Is it memorable? Does it make sense? Can I get something from it? Will I talk about it?
I think it's important just to kind of round off the Kirill's dad story, because I don't want you to go away thinking that Kirill's dad did this, in the 80s and 90s, and that was the end of it, because his editing career continues and is better than ever. He's more technically proficient than ever. So
absolutely. I think he had a creative break for about 10 years, and then he has taken up doing his own movies recently. He's been visiting many places in last 5-6 years, and he's been taking his little camera with him. So he's been filming his holidays. And then originally he asked me to edit his videos. So I've done a few edits where he sat over my shoulder and kind of directed. And then he gone as far as buying his own Mac and downloading Final Cut to do his holiday movie. So I think at the moment he's done about 30. Last time he was posting to me, he's gone a bit mellow. I think no action, just sort of like landscapes, scenery.
Yeah.
I think I encourage him to be like, "Come on, Dad, put a bit more action in." Maybe you're walking through the streets or so. But yeah,
bit of parkour.
He's combining the two things now. He's not only editing, he's also behind the camera. So he's filming, directing, and editing. So
maybe he's more sensitive now to the content, and in terms of the intent of the image. So now he's more sensitive to all those poor filmmakers whose work he's been bastardizing for decades.
Yeah, perhaps maybe he's just a bit low on budget. I reckon if you could get Jason Statham in to star in his.
Isn't it funny how his editing career is the reverse of ours? We all started like filming ourselves running around on the streets, doing nothing, and we're building up to try and want to film Hollywood movies. Kirill's dad started editing Hollywood movies. He started with Bond. He started with Jurassic Park. Down to holidays in Norfolk.
He's gone from Steven Spielberg to Mike Lee. That's what he's done. Bless him. Cool.
So, Brad, can we, before you say goodbye, because I feel like I want some repeating features.
Yeah.
But there's some sort of structure to this. So we do need the Brad Williams score for Enter the Dragon out of 5.
Oh,
and you gave 4 to Contagion.
Yeah.
High score.
I think I'm probably going to give Enter the Dragon 2.5.
2.5.
I'm not going to let its history and its stature intimidate me into kowtowing and giving it a higher mark than it deserves. And it gets 2 stars purely because of Bruce Lee, and half a star because it had 2 scenes that impressed me. Other than that, in hindsight, it's not a great film as I remember it being. So I'm sure that someone's going to hate me for saying that, but that's where I stand.
Exciting stuff. I look forward to when we've got 10 or 15 films on the board. We have a little league table and all your reviews.
Definitely. Cool. Right, guys. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon for episode 3.